Mandarin. Janice will be delighted to know it takes two to replace one.
And it does. Oh, you want me first? Okay, this is delegation, that's fine. So, my name is Lorraine Gilligan and I work in Lurgus. Some of you, I can see, recognise the faces, are very familiar with Lurgus. We are an implementing agency for European youth programmes and programmes that support non-formal education. And we offer a whole heap of programmes, and you'll have seen some of them in the C magazine, which are fantastic. Most of them you know as youth exchanges, okay? So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the story of Youth Pass. And this is a really interesting space for me at the moment, because I think this conversation is really important about outcomes and recognising the value of youth work and the value of what you're doing, and finding ways to really translate that, I suppose, to the people who are making decisions at the moment about youth work and where it's going to go and how it's going to be funded and what youth work is going to be in the future. And I've been in this space before, in 2005 at a European level, when this conversation was circling around, and you know, at political level there was very little understanding really for non-formal education, and we were justifying why this program should survive and why these opportunities should continue. And so a seminar was had in Belgium called Bridges for Recognition, and lots of different stakeholders were brought into that space to really look at the challenges, the fears, the questions. How would it look? Would it be true to youth work? What shape would it be? And it was a really interesting space to be in, and not too different to this room and these questions and these conversations as well. And one of the recommendations from that seminar was for one of the institutions of our programme to go off and to develop a tool, which is the Youth Pass tool. And Janice speaks really passionately about Youth Pass in the C magazine, and nothing I can say is really going to give you that sense, but you know, that's Jerry's job, he can deal with that. But Youth Pass, no problem with the ebook here. Youth Pass is basically just a tool at European level to look at recognising the learning and the outcomes of the experiences that young people and youth workers have in the programmes of Youth in Action and in the future programmes that will replace that Erasmus+. It's one tool. What it does is it takes people through a process. I keep hearing this process is so important to understand what it is you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and what the things are, the flow in terms of your young people, you know, what the journey is going to be. And really, I suppose as well, that can be a group thing, but it can be really focused on individual pathways as well. So that process is what's so important. And in Youth Pass, what we try to do and what we try to teach or to kind of share or to kind of discover with each other is that process. And it's about reflecting, teaching or bringing reflective learning into the space with young people so that they know what they aim to get as an outcome of their experience or what their exchange is going to be. And then they bring that into their own soul, I suppose, and communicate it through their Youth Pass, and they say what it is that they learn themselves, and they tell their own story, and they use this Youth Pass for themselves. And it's generated then into a certificate that they can have to use in any way that they see fit going forward, but they always carry it with them. That's the key. Some of the things that are interesting about Youth Pass are the types of learning experiences. There can be youth exchanges, there can be training courses for youth workers. A Youth Pass can be something that's a process in lots of different types of things that we fund and support, but it's also, I suppose, a model or a process that could be used in a lot of different ways. And I think if there's a strategy or if there's any thinking to happen at a political level here, it might be a very interesting place to look at practice. So there's different types of learning experiences that Youth Pass can be used in, and there are different types of learners. And we talk about learners because that's the space that we want young people to be in. We want them to be in discovery mode. We want youth workers to be in discovery mode and exploring all the time and reflecting in on their experiences and trying to identify what their outcomes are for themselves, and are they reaching those outcomes for themselves, and how is that happening as well. So it's the process stuff again. So different types of learners. It's not just young people. It's also youth workers. So the youth workers who are involved in these exchange experiences or the EVS experiences or whatever it is, they're also learners in that process. So they can also be, you know, reflective learners in that process. And they can also generate their own outcomes in that process as learners. So what you're talking about then in Youth Pass is there were 8 key competencies explored and defined. And a competency The framework of Youth Pass is a skill or knowledge or an attribute, basically. And that's the broad definition, because we're working in an international language as well, so we had to go in and define that a little bit in a way that other languages and that other cultures will understand. So we have these 8 key competencies, and I've given you a little cheat sheet in your book, in your handout, in your pack, so that you can see what they are. But they're really interesting. The idea is that they're interchangeable. No one competence is more important than the other, so you can move between them, you can focus on one. It's really down to the young person to decide where their learning goes, and that's done through a process of dialogue with their youth workers and through mentoring and reflection with their youth workers. So we have, just very quickly, I'll fly through them, competence in communication in the mother tongue, in a foreign language, mathematical competence, digital competence, learning to learn, social and civic competence, sense of initiative and entrepreneurship, and cultural awareness and expression. So those 8 key competencies have been developed by, I think, through the OECD, some research that was done, and also through the Lifelong Learning Programme and the Lisbon Strategy for Knowledge in Europe. They've been explored and set out in the European policy as those skills and competences that young people and that citizens in general should have access to, and all citizens should have access to, developing in those areas. So Youth Pass works within those. They seem really lofty, so we never start with those. We always start with the youth worker, bringing the process through, and then they come into that framework at the end. We'll talk about what a Youth Pass looks like later, but what I will talk about a little bit more is the quality, the impact that Youth Pass can have on quality. We've seen it over the years, we've had lots of conversations, and we've even had a round table in partnership with CDYSB recently to discuss how Youth Pass can impact on the quality and feed into giving outcomes and communicating outcomes back in through the NQSF or back into policy and decision makers as well. So we've been told by people who have been using Youth Pass with their young people that it gives them evidence, it gives them markers. They're able to say, we had X amount of young people involved in a project, and they develop their competencies in their mother tongue or in a foreign language or in their learning to learn ability. So they're able to actually frame the language into outcomes, okay? That's something that we would like to support further discussion in, and it's really great to be invited into this space and to back Jerry a little bit in terms of the overview of what Youth in Action offers, because we think that in the new programme, this is going to continue to be something that's very, very important in Erasmus+. It's going to be something that's very, very important in European policy, and the new programme is going to have a lot more closer links to that. So we think that our experience in Youth Pass is something that maybe could be discussed at a national level and see if there's any potential to take up what's best about it and to leave the rest behind, I suppose. What I love about Youth Pass is that it really is sympathetic to youth work. It's about planned, educational, voluntary experiences. Nobody has to get a Youth Pass. Young people decide to get one if they want one. So it's really an opportunity for them to say, well, I'm learning, this is what I'm learning, and this is how I want to be able to recognise that learning. So it's absolutely voluntary. I've given you a link to an impact study. I won't go through an awful lot of it other than to say that the proof is there, the evidence is there from organisations and young people who are using Youth Pass, that they feel it makes a big difference in being able to communicate the impact and quality of youth work. They feel that young people are able to use this to improve their employability or improve access to different traineeships and to education, so it's working. And young people themselves see it as being valuable, which is the most important thing. Some people say no to Youth Pass, and that's okay. That's a choice. That's what they're allowed to do. Down with this kind of thing, is what I've written there. In the research, in the impact study, what they say is if they didn't do a Youth Pass, it was because they weren't offered it, or because they didn't really understand the value of it at the time. Okay? And that's okay. People can come into that space. But youth workers, youth managers, the youth sector, you're gatekeepers to that process for informing young people in that process that they have these options, that it's something that they can access. So that's one of the things that we try to work with people on. In Erasmus Plus, starts next year. February is the first deadline, we think. Employability, policy development, closer links between practice and policy development, and innovation and entrepreneurship are going to be our key themes. Youth Pass is going to be something central to that at a European level. That's something that is going to be developed further and further and further in the European world. And as I said, in Erasmus Plus, there may be opportunities for people in this room, in this space, to take your conversations and to think about what's possible at a national level. You can seek funding perhaps to be able to take this conversation to a different level and to go a little bit deeper. So that's the overview stuff. And now it's time, I suppose, Jerry, if you want to really juicy, lovely storytelling part.
Oh, we hope.
Yeah.
First of all, I love youth pass. I just love it because I think it can be used not just in the European context, but in the work that we do every day. It can be used with your group that are just, that's meeting once a week and developing any sort of project. And probably just give you a little background. I've been doing youth in action projects for about 10 years now. And when we talk about outcomes, because this is about outcomes, I think the European stuff, they've been asking this for 10 years. When you do an application, they ask you what are you doing, why you're doing it, and what's the learning, what's the outcome for the project. So we've had to think about this. We've had to think about it for 10 years. And it really does focus it. And I think for the first 5 years when we were doing the projects, and if you're doing an international youth exchange or a particular project like that is very intense, because obviously it's over 7 or 8 days with young people, and it is intense. So there's huge learning going on, there's huge things happening. And I remember the first few projects we come back and say, Jesus, how do you capture what just happened? You know, how do we capture that? How do you write down, this guy's just changed his life, he's just decided he's going to take a different direction, you know? He was unemployed, then he's gone back to school because he met other European young people and he's seen the way they were living. How do you capture that? So when the Youth Pass formula was started, probably over the last 5 or 6 years, really it's been used in projects and has come out as a tool for you. And it's only a tool. It's a tool that you can use in your everyday life. And it came out. We immediately took it because the first thing about the tool, as Lorraine said, it's voluntary participation by young people. So we're not telling young people you have to take part in this. You have to do this Youth Pass as part of this project. If you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it. But we try and build into a program or a project that's taking place some sort of space for reflection, which again is about